Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line here on TVP World. This is where we break down some of the most important business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. As the anticipation rises in advance of the June 1st presidential runoff here in Poland, voters need to make their final decision. Who will be their president? Warsaw's mayor and Civic Coalition candidate Rafał Trzaskowski, or opposition candidate representing Law and Justice Karol Nawrocki? Today on The Bottom Line, we're going to look into the economic impact of what both candidates might bring to the table and what that might mean for Poland. Let's go to Jan Kennedy's report.
After the first round of Poland's presidential election, the race for the presidential palace remains wide open. Liberal candidate Rafał Trzaskowski came out on top, but his lead over Conservative rival Karol Nawrocki was less than 2 percentage points. Economists have been speculating about the potential economic impact of each candidate's victory, and so far, there has been one main finding.
In Poland, we've got the ruling coalition that is pro-European, pro-liberal, but without the support of the president, it may, ruling the country may be very, very difficult. So that's why this election is very important in Poland.
As president, Trzaskowski would support the government's agenda, which the current Conservative head of state, Andrzej Duda, has hindered. This cooperation would prop up Poland's image as a stable economy, which would bolster the Polish currency, as well as the stock and bond markets. But experts say that Nawrocki doesn't spook investors as opposed to other right-wing candidates in the EU.
On the other hand, ideas of Karol Nawrocki are not seen as very pessimistic by foreign investors. He's not considered, like, for example, we had in Romania in latest presidential elections when we had the far-right candidate, and there both the currency and also bond yields suffered from that likelihood that George Simeon will become the next president.
Votes of Sławomir Menczen's supporters will be a decisive factor in determining the next president. The far-right candidate secured nearly 15% in the first round and has asked both Trzaskowski and Nawrocki to endorse a list of 8 demands, among them anti-EU pledges and tax cuts.
Point 1. I will not sign any law that raises existing taxes, contributions and fees for Poles or introduces new fiscal burdens.
This aligns closely with Nawrocki's pledges, which include cutting VAT by 1 percentage point, scrapping income tax for families with 2 or more children, eliminating the second tax bracket, and a partial abolition of capital gains tax. Trzaskowski, meanwhile, said that he will ensure that the government follows through on its promise to double the standard deduction rate, something that would cost the budget almost 14 billion euros a year. While Nawrocki also supports this idea, he hasn't been very vocal about it. But experts say that given Poland's ballooning budget deficit, even the slightest tax cuts would be hard to implement.
There's not so much room for having more expenses. So whereas we can appreciate really in those programs that there are some ideas to have a positive effect, I'm quite skeptical about that, if that will be really feasible to implement.
One thing is certain, pledges around the economy will play a key role in securing an election victory.
As much as the controversial issues are the ones that gain the public's attention during a presidential campaign, it's the economic pledges that we should take a look at to get an idea of what lies ahead. Let's get into what presidential candidates Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki claim they will deliver for Poland's economy when they move into the presidential palace. Joining us today is former Finance Minister for Poland, Paweł Wojciechowski. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Hello, nice to be here.
So, Rafał Trzaskowski, if he were to join his coalition government as president of Poland, would allow the government to carry on with its mandate. At least that appears to be the case. Or is that easier said than done?
Well, definitely he has some independent view on the economy, on politics, but he is not a person to fight with the government. He's a person to agree on the right path of the economic development and in defense. And he showed during his campaign that he has some couple of interesting elements special fund that he wants to create under president to support regions, special zone for military or defense investments in the Polish economy on the eastern flank, and the like, So there's some combination of what government proposed and what he's proposing himself. While Mr. Nawrocki is just the opposite. He's looking for a deadlock with the government. Probably he would use the veto very frequently in his policy, and he would be waiting for the new elections to bring back peace and justice, maybe supplemented by Konfederacja, which is a new far-right party as well.
But do you think that actually if Rafał Trzaskowski were to move into the presidential palace, do you think that that would actually put more pressure on the government to deliver on their commitments? Because theoretically, there would be no pressure for the bills to be stalled. The president wouldn't have any reason to veto any legislation, so everything should go really very smoothly.
Well, collaboration...
Theoretically, obviously.
Collaboration is... what would you call it in Polish constitution, cohabitation, is a better approach than deadlock in doing anything in Poland. Especially Poland is under the security threat, in terms of the war in Ukraine, in terms of defense build-up, in terms of trying to recover after years where we have a very low investment rate in relationship to the GDP. So it is an effort to bring back Poland on the front stage, with Mr. Tusk, Mr. Trzaskowski, Mr. Sikorski on the foreign policy. That would be a great trio to play. On the economic front, Poland is already, a rising star in Europe because probably will have the highest growth rate this year in Europe. Now it's a little bit behind Ireland, but this is still, number 2, and with a high, rating from Moody's and other rating agencies. So we are calming the markets with Warsaw Stock Exchange, almost 30%, 20-some-5% from the beginning of the year. So it shows that Polish economy is going well under this government. It doesn't mean that he will fulfill all the promises of the government, because there's always a, reconciliation of diverse goals. For example, fiscal sustainability under the excessive deficit procedure, and some spendings, which are, for example, tax cuts or social spending as promised by the government.
Do you think that if Trzaskowski were to win, that would be a very strong and positive signal of stability to foreign investors? Because that would actually fall in line with this narrative that we see that there is positive growth as presented, this idea of investment that Finance Minister Andrzej Domański is, very fond of and he believes very strongly in.
Well, there's always two components to look at from the political point of view from foreign investors' point of view. I used to be heading a foreign investment agency, so I spoke a long time for a couple of years with foreign investors, and they always emphasize, that Poland needs to build up, for example, infrastructure. The political tensions were smaller. Now the political tensions could become a major issue, this deadlock. And it's not only the deadlock in doing reforms, but also deadlock in restoring the rule of law. This is very important.
So if Trzaskowski were to win, would they breathe a sigh?
Of course, this is one of the key elements of his approach. We would want to restore the rule of law. And,
so everyone would be relieved?
Yeah, everybody would be relieved because a lot of things will happen. Judiciary system would work faster in terms of moving ahead with, for example, we were able to unlock the investment, the KPO, which is the Next Generation EU funds, European funds. I computed in the past, how much it cost every citizen those 2 years suspension of the European funds from Next Generation EU, and I came up with a number of 3,200 zloty It's almost $1,000 per citizen. This is how much we lost. Not because the penalties we pay to the court, the European court, but also because lack of investment, lack of multiplier effect in the economy caused this type of lack of GDP growth. And actually 2024-23, the last year of the previous government, was the very mediocre growth, very small with almost close to zero, with a large deficit.
But I'm going to have to counter a little bit of what you said, because on Monday, Millennium Bank released an analysis that said that the markets are not afraid of Nawrocki. And actually abroad, Nawrocki is not viewed as an extreme candidate. Obviously, he's understood to be a conservative, but not necessarily extreme or nationalist in any sort of way.
Well, perhaps those bankers, analysts know better Mr. Nawrocki, because for me and for many people who try to understand what he's talking about, it's a mystery. We don't know what his views are, because he's kind of repetitive of the program which is written on the page on the website. But it's very difficult to see what kind of ideas he has. He's a new person on the political block, since half a year. He emerged somewhere, and we don't know exactly what he's thinking, except that he's supported by peace and justice.
But a lot of his economic pledges, because obviously we need to take a look at what he offers, they focus on a lot of domestic issues, and they support families, which obviously in these current times, it appeals to, the average Joe. He says that he'll bring electricity prices down, he won't raise taxes, the partial abolition of capital taxes gains, curbing illegal migration, which people feel very strongly about these days. It's what people want to hear. They want to hear that their jobs are secure and that their hard-earned money will stay in their pockets.
Well, the thing is that the president doesn't have a competence of the economy. He can have legislative initiative, but with no government support, he will not do anything. So some of those, like lowering electricity prices, is a pure nonsense, because he didn't say how he would do it. In terms of other things, he would need support from the government. He doesn't have one. So the only way to do it right, to get any positive economic effects, is to work together with the government today, on the political front and on the economic front. This is the only option. Otherwise, the deadlock will be costly, because one thing which is the most fundamental element which is different between Mr. Nawrocki and Mr. Trzaskowski, this is the fact that Trzaskowski is very much willing to cooperate closely with the European Union. Whereas Mr. Nawrocki, including other candidates who actually got a lot of support, is Euro-skeptic. And the Euroscepticism causes already suspension of EU funds and could happen in the future. So people are thinking that, we don't want this to happen again, because we didn't have a rule of law, we didn't have any funding. So what the sense is to go back to the same story we had before.
If Trzaskowski were to lose the election, how destabilizing do you think it would be for the economy? And I ask this question because I want to find out, how destabilizing really could it be? Well, despite what the media says.
First of all, that would have much greater volatility on the capital markets. Second, probably less foreign direct investments, probably less reforms. And those reforms would create ambiance for which is the investment climate, which is related to fundamental changes related to the rule of law, the build-up of the institutions, the right institutions, the good governance, and those elements are key as shows the economic theories. For example, Mr. Acemoglu got the Nobel Prize last year because institutions matter for the economic growth. This is very important. And this government agenda, together with Mr. Trzaskowski at the presidency, they would put it forward and they will do it the right way. Otherwise, we would have a deadlock, potential turbulence on the markets, on political front, lack of investments, and of course, it will not happen overnight. But this is the people living with expectations. Is it worthwhile to invest in a country which will have political problems in the future?
Rafał Trzaskowski's website has a motto which is called economic patriotism, and he's keen to cut red tape in order to assist small and medium enterprises, something that would work very well with the head of deregulation, Rafał Trzaskowski's efforts. Putting their efforts together, how would that contribute to the country's economic growth?
Well, it's very important that this agenda is very well tailor-made also for the Polish entrepreneurs, small, medium, large. This is more of the thinking that the economic patriotism is about those people who pay taxes in Poland, those who contribute to the Polish economy, those who would like to invest more in Poland. And cutting the red tape, which is the regulation effort of Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski, together with the efforts of the government to bring in more investments into Poland, by negotiating with foreign investors, together with the Polish investors as well. Mr. Tusk, president of not president, but the prime minister, said that he would want to have more, what you call it, Polonization, which is, for example, in terms of what I think Poland needs internationalization, but at the same time, Poland needs to have the fair rules of the game, to have access for the Polish companies which grew and already have the technology to participate in the procurement processes which are given by the state-owned enterprises. So altogether it's what you call it economic patriotism, which is a kind of new agenda for President Trzaskowski, the president of the city of Warsaw. It's well developed and also puts the right accents, the right ideas in the right place, and I think this is very important for the development, both of the whole country, but also at the regional level, because he focuses on the regions as well, which are underdeveloped.
And as we wrap up, we have an increasing budget deficit in the government. And Nawrocki is very keen to make commitments to bring VAT down, scrap income tax for families with 2 kids or more. Is this something that he can afford to commit to? But also keeping in mind that Trzaskowski made this commitment on Sunday, or renewed his commitment on behalf of his coalition government to double the tax-free allowance. But this was actually a pledge that was made by the government in 2023, something that he seemed to just bring up suddenly on Sunday. So really, my question is, can either of the candidates make this kind of commitment, keeping in mind that the deficit is pretty significant?
Well, commitments of Trzaskowski are feasible as long as the government will support it. So if this is part of government decisions...
Well, they're both making similar commitments.
Yeah, but you know, Nawrocki commitments which are out of the blue sky, now agreed with the government, will not fly. So this is just a pure propaganda. So in that sense, you know, it is kind of not that relevant today to discuss about those concepts. This is usually the area of the parliamentary elections, when the political parties form the government.
But is it fiscally responsible? Fiscal
responsibility is not a very pronounced theme of both candidates, although the expenditures, you know, the whole package of Mr. Nawrocki is about twice as big as Mr. Trzaskowski. So, I mean, that will not happen, okay? So people should not worry that he will implement anything, because if he becomes a president, he will not be able to implement anything. With Mr. Trzaskowski, it's possible he implements some of the reforms, because with the support of government. Otherwise, I would say they would have to look at different elements of this policy game, look at, you know, fiscal sustainability at the same time of the benefits for the economy. If you run only the economy, you know, stimulating the economy with consumption, for example, by cutting the taxes or giving social spendings, it's not the best way for Poland to develop. So I look very favorable at Mr. Trzaskowski, because he emphasized the development aspects, which is the investing in the real infrastructure, you know, like CPK, Atom, and others, you know, and defense as well, to bring...
Nawrocki made similar commitments.
Yeah, commitments are intertwined with government policy, and this is the strong points of Trzaskowski vis-à-vis Nawrocki.
Okay, former Finance Minister of Poland, Paweł Wojciechowski, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that concludes the bottom line for today. I was your host, Marie Cato. We're on every weekday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and analysis, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.